The Vrikan Dominion had long been regarded as one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Their rule was not just feared, it was nearly revered, enforced through generations of military perfection and technological might. From the ashes of 100 fallen civilizations, the Dominion rose as a war-forged entity, one that had never known defeat in open conflict. Their high commander, Zara Talvek, was both a symbol and a weapon, ruthless, brilliant, and utterly unstoppable. On the battlefield, she had never failed, and she was the reason the Dominion was viewed as invincible. But this was not a story of war. Not at first. The Coalition Games were a diplomatic alternative to full-scale combat, an interstellar tournament designed to test strategic, technological, and tactical supremacy through simulations and limited conflict. Every 40 years, the Coalition invited its most prominent member species to send representatives. These weren't traditional wars, but a means to determine influence without bloodshed. The winner would claim status, prestige, and most notably the right to request any reasonable prize from the losing factions. This year marked Earth's first invitation. Humanity had recently stepped onto the galactic stage, and their entry into the games was viewed by many as a formality, a gesture, a way for the older species to observe the newcomers and chuckle at their primitive ways. Earth sent a small delegation, modest in number, unimpressive in technology, and their lone competitor for the games was a man named Sergeant Mason Reed. He was not what anyone expected. Medium build, no implants, no obvious weapons. He carried an old duffel bag, drank coffee at inappropriate times, and constantly wore a relaxed, unreadable expression. While the other competitors stood in gleaming armor or shimmering robes, Mason looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong building. But once the competition began, he shocked everyone. The Coalition Games included a range of events: ship command simulations, squad-based battles, survival missions, stealth operations, siege planning, psychological warfare exercises, and more. Each round was more difficult than the last. Species with cybernetic brains and centuries of military experience failed under pressure. Mason didn't just pass, he thrived. His strategies were unorthodox. He played like someone who had nothing to lose and everything to teach. He bluffed. He baited, and he made bold decisions based on gut instinct and calculated risk. He smiled while others panicked. His tactics included ancient battlefield feints, improvised sabotage, and maneuvers even the Vrikan had to study in slow-motion analysis just to understand. Zara Talvek noticed him immediately. At first, she dismissed him, a novelty, perhaps an amusing curiosity. But as the games progressed, her interest deepened. She recognized a rare mind at work. He was not an underdog. He was dangerous. By the time the final match arrived, only two remained undefeated: Zara and Mason. The final round was more than a battle, it was a galactic event. The arena was a triple moon system with variable gravity, atmospheric anomalies, and hostile terrain. Each commander controlled a force of 500 soldiers, drones, and artillery. Observers from across the stars tuned in to witness what many believed would be a short, brutal conclusion in favor of the Dominion. They were wrong. What unfolded was a masterclass in warfare. Zara's precision and discipline met Mason's adaptability and unpredictability. Her forces marched in perfect sync. His soldiers vanished into fog and reappeared where no one expected. She used AI-assisted orbital scans. He used decoys, fake cum chatter, and gravity glitches to mislead her data. Her army was a blade. His was a swarm of bees with knives. In the end, after 3 days of relentless war simulation, Zara eked out a narrow victory by a margin of 1.2%. She stood bloodied but victorious, her soldiers battered but proud. Mason stood across from her, arms crossed, calm as ever. The council gathered for the ceremonial conclusion. The victor, as per custom, was to be offered a single prize, any request short of galactic law-breaking or species-wide harm. Everyone expected Zara to ask for a fleet upgrade, control of a star system, or dominion over a rare resource. Instead, she turned, raised one gaunted finger, and pointed straight at Mason. "I want him," she said. "Give me the human." The chamber went silent. No one understood why. And Mason. He just sipped his coffee, smiled slightly, and said, "Well, that's new." Zara's shocking request demanding a human as her prize sent waves across the entire coalition. For centuries, victors of the coalition games had requested warships, planetary treaties, even modifications to interstellar law. Never before had anyone asked for a person, much less a soldier, from an emerging, relatively primitive species like humanity. The Grand Chamber, home to the Coalition Council, erupted into chaos. Ambassadors, generals, and envoys debated Zara's words in real time. Did she mean it literally? Is this symbolic? Was the human some kind of secret weapon? The only person not reacting with panic or confusion was Sergeant Mason. Reed himself, the man at the center of the storm, leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, with the same unreadable calm he'd worn throughout the entire competition. As various species argued about morality, protocol, and legal precedent, Mason simply raised an eyebrow. The council, desperate to restore order, turned to Zara. "High Commander Talvek," Counselor Velen of the Trells began. "You do understand that the Coalition does not engage in the trafficking or enslavement of sentient beings, yes?" Zara's golden eyes narrowed not with the Vodeno. "Offense, but with certainty. I do not seek ownership. I seek his presence, his counsel, his perspective. He is unlike any tactician I've encountered in 1,000 campaigns." "Then, you wish him to join your command?" the council asked. Zara tilted her head. "I want him to return with me. Observe our structure. Teach. Debate. Stay as long as he is willing." Murmurs erupted again, this time with added confusion. This wasn't a romantic claim, nor a hostage demand. This was something stranger. Zara had asked for dialogue, for proximity. It defied every tradition of the Dominion's cold, authoritarian culture. Finally, all eyes turned to Mason. He stood casually, hands in pockets, and addressed the chamber with a half smile. "So let me get this straight. You want me to go live on your giant war planet and talk shop?" Zara nodded once. "That is correct. Do I get coffee?" A stunned silence. The human continued, "Because if your military bases don't have coffee, this deal's off." Zara blinked, then replied evenly, "We can replicate whatever you require." "Even better," Mason muttered. "All right. I've got no orders preventing it. Long as I'm not being held hostage or expected to kneel, I'll come. Could be interesting. You agree?" Counselor Velen asked in disbelief. Mason shrugged. "She won fair and square. And honestly, I've never seen someone not ask for a ship or a throne. It's kind of flattering." Earth's delegation hesitated. Mason's commanding officer, General Park, eventually approached him. "Are you sure about this?" she asked privately. Mason nodded. "She doesn't want a symbol. She wants insight." "I've seen worse assignments." Park sighed. "Well, Earth's reputation just quadrupled in the last 30 minutes. With reluctant agreement from Earth's diplomatic corps, coalition approval was eventually granted. Mason would not be considered property, nor officially transferred as an asset. Instead, he would act as an Earth liaison, an informal observer sent voluntarily to learn and assist the Vrekan Dominion. The galaxy's opinion was sharply divided. Some species viewed it as dangerous, a potential surrender of human secrets. Others feared a scandal. Still more, especially fringe empires, speculated that this was an elaborate ruse. Perhaps Mason had actually lost, and Earth was giving him up as penance, but the humans knew better. Mason boarded the Dominion Star Cruiser. Ludwig 3 days later. The event was broadcast live to millions of viewers. He arrived with nothing but a small duffel, his regulation data pad, and a thermos of Earth-grown coffee. Zara met him on the hangar deck personally, flanked by a full honor guard. Mason stepped forward and gave a mock salute. "So, do I call? You boss, commander, or just your majesty?" Zara's lip twitched almost a smile. "You may call me Zara." "Cool," Mason replied. "So, what's the plan?" "We return to Vrikan Prime," she said. "And then we begin." The true nature of beginning remained unclear. But both sides, human and Vrikan, were now tied in a way no one could have predicted. One through strength, one through strategy. And something unspoken between them, curiosity, perhaps burned beneath the surface. As the Dominion ship jumped to FTL and left the Coalition Corps behind, the galactic community was left buzzing. Why had the High Commander claimed a human? And why had he agreed? Mason simply leaned back in his seat, sipped his coffee, and muttered to no one in particular, "Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes." The Dominion Star Cruiser Bloodwake reached Vrikan Prime after 4 standard days in hyperspace. Mason Reed had spent most of that time quietly observing, mentally cataloging everything from the crew's discipline to their odd avoidance of eye contact when speaking with him. The Vrikan were a hierarchical, honor-bound species, and whatever Zara had done by bringing him here, it clearly upset a lot of unspoken traditions. But Mason, as always, kept his cool. Upon arrival, Mason beheld the infamous fortress world for the first time. Vrikan Prime wasn't a lush homeworld like Earth. It was engineered, optimized, and weaponized. A planet-sized defense installation wrapped in automated gun platforms, docking rings, and an artificial ring of urbanized steel. The world didn't invite life, it dominated it. It was beautiful, in a terrifying way, all sharp architecture, red banners, and roaring engines. Zara personally escorted Mason to his quarters. He expected a cell, maybe a guest suite under surveillance. Instead, he received a luxury wing of one of the highest Spire's accommodations usually reserved for warlords or nobles. Not only was his privacy respected, but he was also given a secure link to Earth, full access to Dominion military archives, redacted only slightly, and permission to explore select areas of the fortress unsupervised. Something wasn't adding up. It became clear over the following weeks that Zara hadn't brought Mason to show him off, or to learn his secrets. No, she genuinely wanted him to analyze her empire, to critique it, test it, even improve it. She invited him to war council sessions, much to the fury of her generals. They glared as the unaugmented human calmly questioned centuries-old doctrines. "You flank too predictably," he said once, during a tactical simulation. "And you're too rigid about formation timing," General Hexervan growled. "Our precision is our strength." "Your predictability is your weakness," Mason replied without flinching. "Strength is what wins first. The winner is who adapts fastest." Zara said nothing, but her eyes gleamed with approval. She began to assign him military case studies, war simulations, even live drills. Slowly, her elite officers were required to face Mason in simulated conflict. To their frustration and private admiration, he beat them more often than not. He used unconventional moves, borrowed strategies from Earth's ancient wars, and sometimes did nothing for long periods just to bait his opponents into overreacting. What was once curiosity began turning into transformation. Zara, wasn't just interested in Mason. She was rebuilding the Dominion using him as a philosophical anchor point. And Mason? He started to see her not as a conqueror, but as a leader desperate to save her civilization from the decay of routine. He began to understand her motivation. Zara had won everything, but she'd also seen what unchecked dominance did to empires. It made them blind, lazy, predictable. Mason wasn't just a trophy, he was a spark, a challenge to an unyielding system. But not everyone welcomed the change. Deep within the Dominion ranks, discontent festered. A faction led by General Corrin, a traditionalist with a deep hatred for aliens, especially inferior species like humans, was already plotting rebellion. To him, Mason's influence wasn't just disruptive. It was heresy. He believed Zara had been weakened, corrupted by alien thinking. His plan was simple: remove the human, discredit Zara, and take power by force. Mason remained unaware of how precarious his position truly was. He noticed how the guards near his quarters began to rotate more frequently, how some officers avoided him entirely, while others started asking probing questions. He didn't say anything to Zara yet. He was still analyzing. Then, during what should have been a routine observation at a training exercise, Mason was ambushed. He was unarmed intentionally to prove his trust. But that trust was betrayed. Several Dominion shock troops turned on him. Trained assassins in elite armor descended upon him with bladed gauntlets and suppressed rifles. Mason didn't panic. He fought like a cornered animal, improvising weapons, using the terrain, disabling one attacker with his thermos still half full of coffee, and managing to hold off several more before he was overwhelmed and knocked unconscious. When word reached Zara, she didn't hesitate. She didn't convene a council. She didn't issue an order. She stormed the corridors herself alone, cloaked in ceremonial armor, wielding her family's blade. What followed was brutal. Zara cut down the traitorous troops one by one, carving a path through the fortress to the chamber where Mason lay. When she reached General Corrin, who stood over the bloodied human, she spoke only 3 words: "He is mine." The aftermath of the ambush sent deep shockwaves through Vrikan Prime. Though Zara, Talvek had successfully slain General Corrin and his rebel followers with her own hand. The fact that such a betrayal had occurred at all on the Dominion's sacred fortress world was a disgrace. The Bloodwake may have left the coalition to roaring applause, but back home, Zara's decision to bring a human into the heart of their military had quietly enraged powerful factions. And now, that resentment had boiled into open violence. Sergeant Mason Reed, the target of that violence, lay unconscious in a Dominion medical chamber surrounded by advanced technology and battle-hardened healers. The injuries he'd sustained in the ambush were severe: a cracked rib, a concussion, minor internal bleeding, and 2 fractured limbs. He had still managed to disable several attackers with improvised tools before being taken down. The fact that he survived at all was testament to his training and adaptability. Zara didn't leave his side for days. She stood at his bedside in full ceremonial armor, blade still bloodstained, as her advisors nervously delivered reports and updates. None dared criticize her now. The fury she had unleashed, precise and surgical, had proven that she was not compromised, not weakened by sentiment. Still, questions hung in the air. Why had she reacted so personally? The Vrikan elite began whispering behind closed doors. Was the human truly just a tactician? Or had something deeper formed between them? Respect, perhaps? A shared vision? Or, to some, something even more unthinkable: trust? 3 days later, Mason finally regained consciousness. He woke to a sterile, softly lit chamber and the unmistakable sound of Dominion boots on steel. Zara sat beside his bed, reading a tactical scroll with calm intensity. "You're alive," she said without looking up. "Barely. Mason rasped. Feels like I got hit by a shuttle. Zara finally looked at him. You nearly died. Corrin betrayed the blood oath. He and his loyalists have been executed. Mason blinked slowly, then winced as he tried to sit up. You did that for me? I did that for the Dominion, she said. And because no one touches what I claim, he smirked. Glad I make a good possession. You're not a possession. Mason, she said with surprising softness, you're necessary. That word lingered in the air. Mason took a long breath. You said you brought me here for strategy, for insight. This kind of backlash, was it worth it? Zara didn't flinch. Yes. She stood and began to pace, her voice sharp and cold again, more for herself than for him. The Dominion is mighty, but we are static. Our doctrine is law. Our victories predictable. And our enemies, those that remain, have learned to adapt while we stagnate. She turned back to him. You are chaos, Mason Reed. You are the unpredictable spark. That forces change. You see weakness where we see tradition. That is why I wanted you. That is why I fought to protect you. He studied her carefully, still groggy but alert. You didn't just want my brain. You wanted to prove something to your people. Zara gave a slight nod. And to myself. Mason leaned back. Well, guess I've earned my keep. Zara. Smirk just a flicker, but it was real. More than that. You've proven your value in fire. In the days that followed, Zara made a public declaration that shocked the entire Dominion. Mason Reed would henceforth serve as Stratago's prime adjunct, an advisory role second only to the High Commander herself. This was unprecedented. A human, an alien, given access to command-level simulations, Dominion research labs, and even elite cadet instruction halls. Some Vrikan nobles denounced the decision, but most remained silent. After all, Mason's predictions had begun to pay off. His analysis of defense vulnerabilities had already saved an entire fleet from a stealth ambush during border patrols. More importantly, Zara had drawn a line in the sand. The future of the Dominion would not be chained to the past. Mason, walking, again with a cane and a half-joking grimace, began to train alongside Dominion officers, not in combat, but in thinking. He challenged their logic, questioned every assumption, taught them human tactics from Earth's most chaotic wars, Vietnam, the Eastern Front, urban counterinsurgency. He replaced their perfect systems with messy, practical, terrifyingly effective solutions. Some officers hated him, others admired him, but all feared him in war games. As trust rebuilt between Mason and the Dominion, a new kind of energy spread throughout the ranks. Curiosity, possibility, change. Zara watched it all from above, quiet, proud, and more certain than ever that her strange, unprecedented decision to claim the human had saved not just her people's military but their very survival. And Mason, for all his sarcasm and calm detachment, he had begun to feel something too. This wasn't just an assignment anymore. It was the start of something much bigger. Time passed, and with it, the nature of Mason Reed's presence in the Vrikan Dominion evolved from anomaly to advisor to something far more critical. By now, he was no longer referred to as the human in whispers or as a curiosity to be tolerated. He had earned a formal title, Stratago's prime adjunct, and with it came authority that rivaled the highest-ranking Dominion generals, but more importantly, he had become a symbol not of Dominion superiority, but of what could happen when strength was tempered with adaptability. The transformation of the Dominion military doctrine under his and Zara's guidance was nothing short of revolutionary. Together, Zara and Mason rewrote the rules of Vrikan warfare, where once the Dominion relied solely on overwhelming strength, perfect formations, and centuries-old strategies. Now it incorporated human unpredictability, misdirection, and flexibility. Mason introduced asymmetric warfare tactics, unpredictable engagement windows, psychological misdirection, and modular command systems. He taught officers how to lose battles strategically in order to win wars. Concepts like controlled retreat, sacrifice for data, and nonlinear escalation spread like wildfire. It wasn't easy. Resistance was fierce in the beginning. Many high-ranking officers felt their honor was being diluted by the humans' chaotic thinking. But then came the test. An aggressive coalition of border species, once terrified of the Dominion's brute force, had been quietly coordinating a new rebellion. They believed the recent chaos within the Vrikan hierarchy, especially the fallout from Koran's betrayal, had left the Empire vulnerable. When they launched a multi-front offensive across 3 sectors, expecting slow and traditional responses, they were met with something terrifyingly unfamiliar. The new Dominion fought like predators that had learned to dance. Fake retreats lured enemy fleets into ambushes. Old, decommissioned weapon systems were suddenly used in unexpected configurations. Command posts relocated mid-battle. Dominion forces began employing deception for the first time in living memory. And it worked. The rebellion collapsed in days. Not weeks. Not months. Days. Zara led the final operation herself, her flagship deploying a strike pattern Mason had once called the Hydra's joke, a tactic that would have been laughed out of any Dominion war college just a year prior. Now it was celebrated as brilliant. Following that victory, even the most rigid Vrikan officers could no longer deny the truth. The human had made them better, and Mason? For once in his life, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. He was still sarcastic, still drank coffee like it was holy water, still made offhand jokes in the middle of serious briefings. But his role wasn't a novelty anymore. He trained future commanders. He helped Zara select new strategic candidates from across the Dominion. He even began developing hybrid tactics that integrated human and Vrikan thought processes, earning the nickname, the mime that walks with fire. But perhaps the biggest transformation wasn't military, it was personal. Between Mason and Zara, something had changed. There was no public romance, no open declarations of love or loyalty. But there were shared glances, unspoken understandings, and moments of silence that said more than words ever could. Their bond had been forged in mutual respect, fire, and choice. When the next coalition games were announced, anticipation soared. This time, Earth and the Dominion submitted a joint team, a fusion of human cunning and Vrikan might. It was an unprecedented display of cooperation, and the galaxy watched with nervous fascination. The result? A flawless performance. Not a single loss. Not a single misstep. And when the final victory was declared, a reporter from the Coalition Broadcast Network asked Zara a simple question. What changed your empire's fate? Zara didn't hesitate. She gestured toward Mason, who stood beside her in formal black and crimson dress uniform, sipping from a cup of dark coffee. They asked what I wanted for winning, she said. I asked for the human, and the galaxy will never be the same. Mason grinned and turned toward her. Best prize you ever claimed? Zara gave him a rare smirk. No, best decision I ever made. And in that moment, the galaxy understood. What had begun as a mysterious demand had become a revolution. A human had walked into the heart of the most fearsome empire in known space, not as a slave, not as a token, but as a catalyst. Together, Zara and Mason had changed the course of history, and they were just getting started.